Hey internets, it's Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and this is Scribes and the Scrolls, the Candlekeep Mysteries, but this is not our regular scheduled program. If you look up above my head, and if you look over here, over here, you will see that this is one of our interludes, not just one of our interludes. This is Interlude 5, our fifth and final interlude, and like for the past month, in fact, the entire month of December, all of our interludes were pre-recorded and available so that we could all watch them together, except this one. We are live tonight, and it has nothing to do with me forgetting to hit unmute on my microphone during a recording session at all. So, yeah, we are bringing to you brand new, fresh, never seen before, our fifth session of our interludes between Dwight and I with Mizya, Scribe, and Scholar. So normally this is the part where I tell you, hey, we're probably there in chat with you. We are, but so are the rest of the crew, hanging out in there, keeping you entertained. You will also notice that none of the limited edition domain tomes or regular domain tomes are in play, but fear not. We have been tallying up all of your wonderful subscriptions and Ko-Fi and tips and all that great stuff to make sure that all of those domain tomes, which last I checked was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 15, go to the book club when we return next week with our regular live episodes. But for tonight, you get just me and just Dwight, and it's going to be just fine.
Like plenty.
Yep. We are, what was it? Oh, it's almost like I don't do this every week. If you look down in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, you will see our sponsors, Talon and Claw and Run Right Play. You will see information pop up during the stream with their relevant information. Please do check out their links. Also, before we get started playing some Dungeons and Dragons, we of course have our usual, we want to let you know that you matter. Your presence on this earth makes a difference whether you believe it or not. I know it can be tough. We've just come out of the holidays. We're coming into a new year after the last 2 years. So no need to explain why you might be struggling. But you don't have to struggle alone. And you don't have to struggle wondering how you can get help. Where can you go to get help? We here at MTD are very open and honest about mental health and our passion for mental health. And one of the things that we've done to help make things a little bit easier, you can, anytime during our stream, you can type in !help into the chat, hit enter, and a link will show up for findahelpline.com. Be sure to check out that link. Head over there now, bookmark it, save it for yourself, save it for a friend, and be sure to know that that's there. Take note of it. You can simply type in your location wherever you are in the not in the country, in the world, and relevant help services will pop up. I know I just said I'm going off rails here for a moment because I've noticed that it's not working. So I will say for right now, go to findahelpline.com. That is the URL where you will find the relevant commands. I don't know why it's not working, but at any rate, that is the URL. We'll have to look into that, see what's going on with that. All right, I've rambled on for long enough. Anything more than 3 minutes, and I can see Dwight start shifting in his chair. Dwight, are you ready to play some Dungeons and Dragons? All right, here we go. We open on a close-up of a black orb, but not any black orb. This particular black orb, we can just barely see the reflections of a landscape below as our viewpoint begins to slowly pan away, and we see that we are looking into the eyes of a raven in flight. As we pull further away, we see the wind whipping over its outspread wings and the feathers ruffling slightly. This ebony raven is in stark contrast to the dark storm clouds behind it as it flies through the air, turning its head to and fro as if searching for something. Suddenly it turns slightly to the right and down, and its head stops moving around as it locks its gaze on something. Turning and banking, dipping its right wing, it glides into a dive, and we follow behind this raven, seeing that we are heading towards a large city in the north. A city bisected from west to east by a large winding river. The larger part of the city is to the north of the river. The southern part of the city is about half as big as the northern section. But it is this southern portion of the city that the raven dives into and begins swooping left and right, beating its wings rapidly as it moves, darting around chimneys, over rooftops, passing through outstretched clotheslines with laundry hanging on them, and then it arcs up once again into the clearing and begins its flight towards one of the two largest structures in this city. A large, sort of rectangular but slightly horseshoe-shaped building, 5 stories tall. The raven flaps its wings as it flies upward towards one of the windows on the 5th floor, and suddenly it lands, digging its talons into the wood of the windowsill. And it turns its head toward the leaded window glass, slightly open. We move past the raven into this open window where we see hardwood floors, we see couches and chairs, tables, several doors leading off from this chamber. This seems to be some sort of common room. And standing all neatly in a row are approximately 30 individuals. There are a few dwarves, a couple of half-elves, a tiefling, a few elves, a couple of humans, and in the middle of this group, a single dark elf, a drow. This entire group stands wearing all identical robes of white with silver piping and embroidery across the collars. They stand silently, waiting for something or someone. Mizya, as we push in to your face in the midst of this group, the lone dark elf, what are you thinking as you are waiting for somebody to show up and take you through your first day working as an attendant at the Vault of Sages in Silvery Moon?
I'm definitely annoyed. It's taking way too long for us. We've been standing here for quite some time. I am in these robes that I don't care for the way that they look or that they feel. And I feel out of place here. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm the only drow, and it's, you know, certain beyond just natural suspicion that eyes are on me, wondering why I'm here. However, anybody looking would not notice it. I'm very used to standing for ceremony and waiting, and just kind of bottling up those emotions of frustration and annoyance that come along with it. Just kind of keeping apprised of everyone around me without being obvious that I'm kind of, just my eyes dart from side to side periodically, but just standing there, probably one of, if not the stillest person in the room, just waiting for them to get on with it.
You hear after a few moments, as you're standing there, the staccato, rhythmic of quickened footsteps rapidly approaching. Hard-heeled shoes on the hardwood floor. And in a moment, these footsteps lead right to the entrance to this room, and you see about a 3.5 foot tall halfling, matronly looking woman, her hair pulled back into neatly into a very tight bun, her hair mostly gray, streaked with a little bit of black, a couple of pencils crisscrossed holding her bun in place. She also wears the white robes with the silver embroidery and piping, though she has a collar that is laid out and a little bit of an extra adornment that shows almost a blood red, showing her rank as a leader of the attendants. This is Wendry Winkle. She is the leader of your particular group of attendants. You know that your common room that you stand in now, the doors that lead off from it lead to rooms that you share with 2 other people, several other rooms. And on this 5th floor of the library, the Vault of Sages, there are several other such dormitories. Wendry stops in front of you as you are in the middle, snaps to attention, and looks left and right at all of you, looks up at you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your first day. My name is, of course, Wendry Winkle, and I am your immediate supervisor. In just a few moments, we will proceed down through the floors of the Vault of Sages, and I will instruct you as to where we are going and what is on each of the floors. Now, should you not remember everything that is said to you, should you lose your place, do not worry. Any of the attendants or any of the attendant supervisors, such as myself, will be more than willing to help you find your place. We do ask that if you are unsure of where it is that you are going or where you are coming from, that you do not bother the sages and scholars that are here or the patrons of the Vault of Sages. Instead, we ask that you rely upon one another. Now, if you will all please follow me. And she turns, and immediately, just as fast as she walked in, she walks right back out. There is a moment where nobody is moving. She just came in, said her piece, and left. Everybody's kind of looking around, kind of murmuring. What do you do?
I kind of glance to the left and right and realize that everyone here is just kind of frozen. No one's willing to step forward. I just kind of sigh and kind of roll my eyes a little bit, and I'll take a step forward.
As you take a step forward, a high elven woman, much younger than you and a little bit taller than you, just as you take your step forward, she takes an even bigger step forward and almost pushes you out of the way as she turns to face everybody and says, Now, we don't want to keep Madam Winkle waiting. We must all move in an orderly fashion and quickly follow after her. Come along. And she kind of gives you just a little bit of a look, and she turns and says, Do follow, and starts to walk out. You know that this is Rosalind Lee, a bit of a haughty high elf, if you will. Several of the others immediately take her lead and they start following after. What do you do?
I kind of, I finished that like half step forward. I just sit there staring directly through her as she says this. And then I just stand there as the rest of the group kind of files past me and falls in line. And I will fall in line at the end, even a couple of steps behind. And I just kind of quietly to myself as we leave the room, do follow, bitch.
As you mutter that, you find that you've fallen into place behind the tiefling man, and you see him. He kind of snickers a little bit. He turns around and he goes, "Right."
I was not talking to you.
And he very quickly takes a couple extra steps to get in front of you. As your group begins to follow Madam Winkle through the halls, she begins quickly describing to you the layout of the Vault of Sages, explaining to you that here on the 5th floor is where it is mostly dormitories for attendants, the attendant supervisor's offices, and their own rooms, as well as there are offices for numerous sages, bookbinders, and this is true as you head down the stairs, in particular of the 4th and 3rd floors. There are offices upon offices and common areas, and you also see mixed in amongst them several study rooms, entire rooms dedicated to the study of herbology and alchemy, entire rooms to astronomy, wildlife, you name it, whatever it is. There seems to be entire areas that are dedicated. These rooms have, sometimes they have several chairs and tables in them. They might have desks, a fireplace or 2 or 3, a variety of chairs and shelves, chalkboards, scientific equipment if it's that type of place, or there might be specimens in jars, whatever. As you pass by each of these rooms, each room is so very dramatically different than the room next to it, depending on the area of study. You continue moving on down through the floors of this building, heading down into the 2nd and 1st floor. Make me a perception check.
It's a 21.
You notice that you have just moved through the first 3 floors, or rather the top 3 floors of the Vault of Sages. You know by reputation that this is supposed to be one of the grandest libraries in all of Faerun. And yet, you have seen no more than a couple dozen books so far. And those are only those books that are carried by individuals hustling past you, or a couple of books spread out on a table in one of the study lounges as somebody is poring over them, or a handful of somebody's personal collection of books within their own office.
I just take note of that, and I just kind of look around the group to see, does it look like anybody's pointing that out or taking notice of it? I mean, obviously I can't read their minds or anything, but just looking to see if I see anybody gesturing or anything like that. Maybe perhaps talking about it.
Nobody seems to notice.
Okay. I just kind of take a mental note and continue on.
As you head down into the second and first floor, these areas are a little more open concept. Much of the upper floors are held up by massive marble pillars. There are on these areas on the first and second floor, particularly the second, there tends to be a lot of small like conversation areas. They're still out in the open, but it's just maybe like a love seat and a couple of chairs arranged facing one another with a small table between them, or a study table here, an occasional small bookshelf, nothing very big. And this continues down to the first floor as well, though there is one very noticeable difference on the first floor. From the main entry doors leading in through these this main part of the first floor, there's a very long, I wouldn't call it a hallway, but it's sort of like an avenue, if you will, within the main thoroughfare of this vault of sages, where there are low bookshelves, maybe 3 feet high, with a handful of books on them. But there are, rising up from these, there are these cork boards, and even now you can see there are some attendants that are tacking up some large broadsheets to these boards. And I would like you to make another perception check.
That's a 6.
It takes you until you're probably a good ways down this thoroughfare of this building before you start to realize that there's several people, quite a few of the public, have come in, and they seem to be almost like a museum, wandering slowly along these broadsheets and looking at them. A couple people are in hushed conversation, and then it dawns on you as you pass a little close by. You kind of move out of the way of one group of people and you get closer to one of these broadsheets. These broadsheets are sort of like if you took newspapers and just opened them up and plastered them up on bulletin boards. And you realize that these are depicting the news from across Faerun, and in particular the Sword Coast. There are news broadsheets from Silvery Moon, the nearby Sundabar, and Luskin over on the coast. As you begin moving further along, you realize that it seems to be almost as if you're walking along the Sword Coast. You see news from Neverwinter and Waterdeep. A little further on is Daggerford and Baldur's Gate. You see mention of a place called Candlekeep. And then just south of that is the southern tip of the Sword Coast in Kelemshan, the desert region. And you sort of notice that additionally that the books through here that are on these shelves, one shelf might contain 30 copies of the same book. And it's as you sort of make this realization, you approach where the rest of the group has gathered, and Madam Winkle is standing there. And she is just saying, and as it were, several of the more popular works are kept here in multiple copies to be easily accessible without having to continuously bother our attendants. The patrons can simply pull the books off the shelves and peruse them at their leisure. It should be noted, however, that at no point, even should these multiple copies of these works leave the premises. You will soon become acquainted with the pricing structure here at the Vault of Sages. Generally speaking, more accessible works and shorter works may only be a silver apiece, but the rarer and more grandiose the particular work that somebody is requesting, the more the cost, as we have to ensure that they have a vested interest in keeping that particular manuscript safe. But fear not, you will soon and quickly learn that pricing structure. Does anybody have any questions so far? And she looks around at everybody.
Is there a who's next to me where I am right now?
I think the person closest to you would be a dwarven woman, young, relatively speaking, probably about 50 or 60, which is, barely into adulthood for a dwarf. In fact, she is one of your roommates. Her name is Aktru.
I walk up and I just kind of lightly place my hand on Aktru's shoulder, and I'll just kind of ever so slightly lean in. Aktru, have you noticed the rare books? Where are they? I think you should ask some questions for us.
Well, there's all those books there. But you're right, I hadn't even thought of it. I walked down five stories of this great library and I've seen a couple hundred books at most.
Only the common ones, right?
The most popular works is what Madame Winkle said.
They clearly can't have us this many attendants for books that are this easily accessible. I think you should ask.
You hear as everybody is looking at the two of you, and you see that everybody's sort of parted a little bit, and Madame Winkle is about 15 feet away and is looking at the two of you talking. I'm sorry. Did one of you have a question?
Yes, I think she did.
Yes, what is it? Right, well, we were just noticing that, well, this place is called the Vault of Sages. It's supposed to be one of the greatest libraries in all the Faerun, and, well, we've just not seen a lot of books here except for these popular ones. And then she kind of steps to the side, tries to disappear. And Madame Winkle, you see that she sort of smiles a moment. Yes, that is a very astute observation. This is, of course, the Vault of Sages. As you have said and identified, and yes, it is true, you've not seen very many books. And you see several of the other attendants seem to be looking around like they just now realized this. And a few feet away from you, you see Rosalind go, yes, of course I knew that. That brings us to the next part of our tour. You see, the building that you see before you This was not always the Vault of Sages. Well, this has always been the Vault of Sages. But the Vault of Sages was not always this building, nor was it here. The original Vault of Sages was actually called the Silver Lady's Library, containing some of the rarest books in all of Faerun. Back in the year 849, that's some 600 plus years ago, a warlord found his way here, made his way into the city, and he and his warband set fire to the Silver Lady's Library. If it were not for the Harpers, we would have lost hundreds and hundreds of the rarest works. But we were able, with their help, to save them. That brings us to the vault. And she turns and heads towards a large set of double doors, oak, very ornate, inlaid with silver. She walks towards them with her hands clasped behind her back. She makes no effort to open the doors or signal to anybody. But as she closes in on them, the doors suddenly and they open wide. And you see that you are at the top of an almost impossibly large set of ornate marble stairs that are slowly winding downward. Without missing a beat, Madam Winkle continues on walking down the stairs, and everybody's quickly following. As you and Aktru follow in through the doors, as you pass through the threshold, you hear behind you as these doors automatically shut behind you. And you hear Madam Winkle speaking and saying, "While you are here in the Vault of Sages, your robes are not only the embroidery is not only for decoration. It contains within it a magical incantation containing your identity and containing your station as an attendant. Simply approaching the doors will grant you access in and out. So you need not worry about being able to get in or out of here. Now," and you hear her voice sort of stop moving as the rest of you catch up to her. And as you come around the final curve of this staircase, you notice two things. One, you notice that the possibly large decorative staircase that spirals around continues down and around. But you barely notice that, Mizya, as you realize you have just come to a landing, and looking in every direction, as far as the eye can see, are shelves upon shelves upon shelves of books, maps, scrolls. They are floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, going all the way up to the 20-foot ceilings. And they just go. They seem to go on forever in every direction. What's your thoughts as you enter this space?
As we I kind of been picture it as we walk through and we kind of come onto this landing. There's almost this moment where like Miz is in shadow and it just kind of is illuminated as they see this endless sea of books. And I kind of my shoulders kind of pull back. I stand up a little bit taller, and there's just you'd have to really look close with just the slightest little smile kind of cracks the corners of my mouth as I realize that this is what I've been working for since I left Menza Branson. This is what I need, where I needed to be, and the time it took me to get here and the work I put in to get here are finally paying off, and I'm here for what I needed.
You see around you, your other attendants are all, even Rosalind cannot pretend to not be in awe at what she sees, as everybody just looks around this place. And Madam Winkle says, "Now, this is just the first of 5 sub-basements, the true vault of sages. There are magical wards and things in place, as well as the fact that we've put the actual library below ground to ensure that we don't have a repeat of what happened 650 years ago. You will find on these shelves some of the rarest, most sought after books and scrolls, magic books. There are so many personal accounts and journals and even works of fiction all throughout this grand library. You will, of course, be spending much of your time down here fetching books and returning books for the sages and the seekers and the students from above. But you should also know, as an attendant of the Vault of Sages, when you are off duty, and only when you are off duty, the entirety of the library is at your disposal for your personal perusal. Now, I must also warn you that it is highly likely that in your first few weeks here, you will become hopelessly lost within the stacks. When I was just a young attendant like you, I was lost on the 3rd sub-basement for nearly 3 days, subsisting only on a packet of crackers that I had secreted away in the pocket of my vestments." And she kind of looks around and just gives a little bit of a wink towards Octu, who looked positively alarmed at this news. And she begins to give you sort of a cursory explanation of how the books are arranged throughout the library, explaining that there's areas of general study, but because of the sheer volume, not only of books within the library, but the volume of works that are constantly being brought in and taken out and looked at by people and through not only yourself, but you know that there's probably a couple hundred attendants in this library. There's no way to have like a true, there's no Forgotten Realms Dewey Decimal System. Books are organized by, you just know where you got the book. And so you know that a book on astrology goes in the astrology section, and people just generally, they put things back where they got them. And they understand how that works. And she continues to explain how things work. But what we're going to do now is I would actually like you to, as we sort of move from here, take us through Mizya's the next few days, weeks, or even the next month or so, as Mizya starts to get into their work and personal, they live now here. What does this look like for Mizya?
From the get-go, I'm very attentive. I'm paying close attention to anything anybody tells me. I would assume I'm working closely with other attendants, searching for books and getting people for our patrons, interacting with folks. But as I'm moving through the stacks inside the vault, I have a notebook with me that I'm starting to make notes on where I see things go, and I'm starting to kind of almost like a mind palace, but it's written out in my book, where I'm developing the system within, knowing that there's no official indexing system for the library. I'm making my own so that as I find things and I start to decipher how it's laid out, it make sense for me. And I use that so that over the course of this first month, I'm very quickly becoming very adept at my job. At the end of the first day, though, as soon as my shift is over, my first thing I do is I seek out Madame Winkle, and I'll approach her. Yes, I was hoping you could help me. I would like to study any information you might have on Menzoberranzan, especially anything that might pertain to House Zalarin of Menzoberranzan. Could you point me in that direction?
Menzoberranzan. And she seems to look off into the distance thoughtfully for a moment. Yes, yes. Menzoberranzan. Come with me. And she takes you down into one of the lower sublevels of the vault. The whole way down, as you go further and further down, she explains to you, I'm going to tell you that you will find not a whole lot on the subject of Menzoberranzan. We do have a section dedicated to Menzoberranzan, the cultures of not only the Underdark dwelling dark elves, but a few of the other heritages of dark elf. Many of the studies, in addition to the studies in the religion sections, there are some books dedicated to Lolth. There is one tome I find absolutely fascinating about Narbondel, the lighted pillar in Menzoberranzan. Of course, no doubt you know all about that. I will warn you, though, Mizya, that many of the works here were written some time ago, and from a perspective of hate, I will be blunt with you. Particularly here in Silvery Moon. There was a time, some time ago, the only interaction that Silvery Moon had with the Dark Elves was their infrequent forays to the surface to murder and capture and enslave those on the surface and drag them down to Menzoberranzan. It wasn't until about 100 years ago, I'm told, a very interesting and nice young man from Menzoberranzan came here and made his home for a time amongst Silvery Moon. Well, he went a long ways into helping assuage people's fears and improve people's understanding of the Dark Elves of Menzoberranzan. I would assume that you find a much more tolerable culture here today than this young man faced 100 years ago. By this time, you find that you are on the 4th sub-basement level, and she has led you to a single section of shelving. And you can immediately recognize some of the binding on the books in darker leathers, some of them emblazoned with filigreed designs of webs and spiders. These are actual tomes that have somehow made their way up from Menzoberranzan.
So, madam, You say many of these books were written from a place of hate. Would you say perhaps they were written by enemies of Menzoberranzan?
I dare say, yes, yes,
Yes, I would like to see those then.
of course. And she directs you to the section and says, well, here you'll find some examinations of the cultures. Here are some first-hand accounts of people affected by the raids. Here is a rather embarrassingly incomplete collection of the houses of Menzoberranzan, and you see that there are spaces as if somebody who arranged this, they know there's a lot more houses in Menzoberranzan, but you see that there are tomes on House Bainry, House de Urden. You see that there is a smaller tome on, in fact, a very small tome on House Lauren. Um, and in some places, there might be a single sheet of paper or something like that. Where there just isn't information. I dare say this is the entirety of our collected works in this entire shelf.
I do think this will do nicely. Thank you so much for your help. I will see you tomorrow, yes?
Yes, yes, I look forward to it.
Yeah. Uh, have a good evening. And I will just kind of turn and just dive right in. I'll start pulling books off the shelf and leafing through.
So that's the end of your first day.
Yeah. So over the course of the next several weeks, my days are again work very straightforward, I'm very precise. I take care of our patrons, and I'm taking those very elaborate notes on where things are and developing my own understanding of the systems here. But as soon as my shift ends, I'm right back down in that sub basement with that drow literature, and I'm that notebook that I'm taking is quickly replaced by a much larger book. I'm taking copious notes every day. Um, and then I will spend hours and hours and hours down here for several days in a row, probably close to 2 weeks, with little to no rest. If I rest, it's kind of finding a corner where nobody's really around and getting a quick couple hours of meditation to kind of get my strength back, and then right back at it. And after about 8 to 10 days or so, um, as I'm sitting down there, uh, my roommate Akshu comes catches me, um, and just warns me, like tells me that she's been really nervous and concerned about me. And I kind of realized that, oh, I've barely eaten, I've barely slept, I've been just diving into these books. And after that, I start to take a more quote unquote regular schedule of working, taking a break to get something to eat, maybe even casually talking to some of the other attendants on my floor, but then right back down to the sub basement. And then at the later in the evening, I will typically come back to our room where I start to collect this. I have a few tomes on a shelf that I am starting to fill in with as I identify information that's missing from the library. I start to fill that in. Houses that aren't accounted for, pieces of history, of drow history, of the history of Menzoberranzan and other houses and other areas in the Underdark that are relevant. And I start to fill that in, and I'm writing my own histories of the area. But I'm just keeping them for myself for right now. They're just kind of up on the shelf. Um, as the weeks go by, those around me start to notice that though my work days are I'm very attentive. I'm probably one of the more focused workers in the library, but my attitude starts to change relatively quickly as you start to hear the same questions over and over again. And whereas I'm 100% about learning, and I'm hearing these really sophomoric, basic questions repeatedly, and I'm pulling the same books off the same shelves, day after day after day. And while my interactions with them are very professional and straightforward, those that watch, as soon as I turn my back and I get a few steps away, my shoulders slump, I roll my eyes, I'm sighing very noticeably compared to those around me. But again, it just starts to get a little bit tense for me at work.
I imagine that there's a certain point where you've become very adept at what you're doing and dealing with these people. I imagine that Rosalind has probably actually gotten told off a couple times for getting smart with people, and has come dangerously close of getting into a lot of trouble for speaking out of turn to somebody, to the wrong person. Though I imagine Octru finds those moments to confide in you that she takes great joy in Rosalind's discipline. I even imagine she shows you, maybe it was her idea, that on each of the floors you've sort of created these shelves that are those books that you're constantly have to go into the stacks for. You've got these sort of quick access shelves. So, and this is probably something that just you and Octru share, maybe one or two of the others. So that while Rosalind has to run all the way down to the 5th floor, deep into the stacks, before returning looking a little cobwebbed and haggard. When somebody requests a similar tome, you're back in like 15 minutes. And one of the things that you've noticed as you've been there about a month, and the source of all of these questions in particular, is at Silvery Moon, there is a place called the Conclave of Silvery Moon. It is a university. It's less a single institution than it is a whole collection of learning institutions, such as Arkan's Invocatorium, which is a school for sorcery. There's Everdusk, which is the religious temples and lore halls. The House of the Harp is the Bardic College of Silvery Moon. The Ladies' College is one of the oldest learning institutions here, named for the original Silver Lady, the founder of Silvery Moon, where they study wizardry and magical history. And then there's Maresk's School of Thaumaturgy. This is where all students start out. This is like the freshmen of the freshmen. And much to your chagrin, all of the professors tell all of the students to come here looking for these particular tomes. And this is why you are constantly dealing with the same questions over and over and over. Go ahead and roll me a perception check. That's all this is, apparently. This session is just Mizya rolling perception checks.
That's a 15.
Okay. Possibly because you've been noticing all of these freshmen and their incessant questions and almost anticipating them. That's why this one individual stands out to you above all others. He is a half-elven man, looks to be in his early 20s. And rather than being dressed in the typical robes or casual wear of common clothes or finery, that depending on their station, that the various students might wear, this individual is wearing shiny cuffed thigh high, not thigh high, sorry, calf high boots. Leather pants, has on a simple leather armor, has an explorer's pack with 50 feet of hempen rope. You see a lantern hanging from it. He has a short sword and a dagger on his belt, and everything looks like he just bought it out of the Faerun equivalent of the J. Crew catalog. Everything is brand new. I mean, when he moves, you can hear the leather creaking with its newness. And he's standing there with this puzzled look on his face, like he's looking for something. And then he spots you. And Mizya so didn't want to deal with that Mizya just up and left. And now there's two of me.
No, I just lost my internet all of a sudden, so I ran inside.
I said that you so didn't want to deal with this individual that you just disappeared.
Yeah. So
we'll
rewind
edit,
a little bit. So.
we'll edit around all of that for the VOD, but you all get to see this live. Right. What was the last thing you heard?
Thigh highs.
Oh my gosh!
Literally, I heard thigh highs, and it killed my internet. So.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it wasn't thigh highs. I quickly corrected that they were calf high, leather cuffed boots, and that he has on leather pants, leather armor. He's wearing an explorer's pack. He's got a 50 feet of hempen rope, a lantern hanging off of it. He's wearing a short sword and a dagger on his sword belt, and everything from head to toe looks like he just bought it out of the Faerunian J. Crew catalog. This guy looks like he just bought anything that said that it was adventurer. That he just went out and bought it. And he's standing there. He's looking around, kind of. Where? I don't even know where to. You! And suddenly he catches sight of you. You! Come here, please. You are an attendant of Silvery Moon, yes? Excuse me, not all of Silvery Moon, but the vault here, yes?
I suppress a groan and step forward. That is correct. How might I be of service to you, sir?
Yes, well, you have an opportunity to be of invaluable service to me. You see, I am an adventurer. As you may or may not have noticed from the way that I am dressed, I'm preparing to go out into the world and seek fame and fortune, gold and renown. To the slaying of monsters, the delving of dungeons, and the rescuing of damsels and princes and men and women and whoever else might need my help. If there's a dragon to be slayed, you can be sure that it will find my blade. But I am searching for a tome that I was told could be found here. Now, I understand if it may be a challenge for you. You'll see it is a very, very rare tome called Gordront's Guide to Monstrous Beasts. Now, please understand how important this is to me, and if you could help me, well, let's just say that you just may go down in history alongside me. And Mizya, you know two things. One, Gordront's Guide to Monstrous Beasts is one of the more popular books requested here at the library in the public lore halls or lounge halls. And that it is the equivalent of like a young adult early reader book describing base monsters and mostly beasts, with probably the most dangerous creature listed in this particular tome being a displacer beast. And some of its validity is even questioned. Some of these monsters appear to even be made up. The other thing that you know is that this individual is standing directly in front of a shelf full of 30 copies of Gordront's Guide to Monstrous Beasts. What do you do?
I take a step in, and I just I place my one hand on his arm, and I kind of wrap my other around his shoulders, and kind of guide him away from the bookshelf. Ah, yes. Let me see if I can help you. And I start to walk away, and lead him on this circuitous path through the room, talking the whole time. I am so excited to hear more about your adventures. I am not much of an adventurer myself, being a scholar, but I've learned quite a bit from helping others such as yourself or reading. One thing I have learned is that paramount to an adventurer's success is their ability to perceive that which is around them. So I would encourage you to use your eyes to see what is around you. You never know what could be just on the other side of your shoulder, per se. And I just continue to lead him around. I take a good 5 to 10 minutes just kind of talking, leading him through stacks, the small stacks in this area, till we loop all the way back around to where we were just standing. And I've been holding on to him the whole time. And yes, well, oh, here we are. And I will reach up and grab the book, one of 30, and place it in his hand. I do so hope that I have helped. And if you are to survive in the wild, I would love to hear tell of your exploits.
You hand this book to him, and he holds it like it is a treasured tome. He kind of runs his hand across the top of it. Well, I dare say I might not have found this book without your help. Tell me,
I'm quite sure of it.
What is your name?
Ah, yes, I am Mizya Helviar.
Mizya Helviar. Yours shall be the first name and encounter that I write down in the tales of my exploits in my own autobiography of my adventures, because you have given me the one piece of information I sought to start me off on my adventures. And let me tell you, Mizya Helvarn, that I will remember you throughout all of my adventures, just as you, Mizya Harvan, shall remember the name Riordan Najin. You might want to write that down.
Oh, I don't forget anything, and I just...
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I have some reading to do. Thank you again, Mazda Harvanen. And he takes this book and turns away from you and heads off to who knows where within the forehall that you are on. As he walks away, you hear behind you, about 10 feet from you, a woman's voice say, "That was expertly handled. And if I do say so, it was quite entertaining to watch the whole thing unfold."
I will kind of spin around and look in the direction of the voice.
As you do so, you see that where the shelf of books that you stand near is, about 10 feet away, is one of the many smaller sitting areas. It consists solely of a love seat with two chairs on either side. There's a couple of potted plants and a small table between each end of the love seat and the chairs. It's one of those several here that seem to just disappear into the shadows between these smaller shelves and where the broadsheets are displayed. But sitting there is a very elegant looking elven woman wearing a very fine dress of black silks, and where there's lace work across her chest, you see underneath the lace work that there's these blood red silks below it. She wears black gloves. Her hair is these, almost seems to glow with its own shine, thick black curls that hang down past her shoulders. And she sits on this seat holding a very thick, very old tome on her lap. Just at a glance, you know that based on the age and the number of pages in this tome, that for her to be sitting here reading this book, and anytime she wants to look through this book, she would have to pay probably 100 to 200 gold pieces. Where most of these books, are a silver piece to a handful of gold. This is a very rare tome indeed.
And I look at her, and I'm kind of just seeing that she's a high elf, kind of immediately on guard.
She's not a high elf.
Oh, not okay.
No, make me a history check.
History check. Did you say she was elven though?
She is elven.
Okay, so that's a 10.
You are not sure of her exact heritage. She holds herself like a high elf, but she lacks.
That she is. Oops, go ahead.
She lacks some of the features of some of the high elves.
Okay.
The higher cheekbones. Most notably, though, her skin is incredibly pale, and her eyes. The entire eye seems to almost be black. At closer look, they're not. And there's just something about her features that you're not sure. She's not high elf. She doesn't appear to be of the Eladrin. But you're not 100% sure.
Still, I think at first just a little on guard, seeing her. Yes, well, that poor boy will be dead within a month. I figure if I show him where that book was, there right over his shoulder, I'd shatter his confidence and he'd be dead within a week. So I figure I bought him a few weeks of enjoyment in his adventuring, but I see he has no chance in the wild.
That is part of what I found so fascinating. And I couldn't help but notice that you seemed to take a small bit of pleasure in toying with that young man. And you see her smile just a little bit.
I think I kind of almost clutch pearls, but just it's just this little hint of it before kind of oh, okay, yeah. So,
I heard you tell that young man your name. Was it Mizya?
yes, Mizya Helviar.
Yes. Well, Mizya Helviar, And she stands up and walks towards you, carrying this tome. And as she does so, seeming to just almost meld out of the shadows, two more of these pale elves, both of them male, flank her. They are wearing equally black robes, though lacking some of the more extravagant adornments. But they stand and look around everywhere but her, even eyeing you a little bit. They clearly seem to be some form of security. You're new here.
Yeah. Yes.
You are much older than many of the other attendants here.
You are quite perceptive.
Where do you come from, Mizya Helviar?
Well, I hold my hands out and I kind of turn them over, kind of just highlighting my skin color. Clearly, I'm from the Underdark. I come by way of Minzoberans and many, many years ago. But, well, let's not talk about that.
Very well. I'll tell you what, Mizya Helviar, the Underdark, formerly of Menzoberranzan. I will let you choose what we talk about when I return tomorrow. You will be my attendant. And she hands you this rare tome. I will, of course, be requesting this book again tomorrow. And I shall see you then, Mizya. She stands there for just a moment, just looking at you. And then she turns and walks away with her two bodyguards flanking her. And as she does so, that's where we're going to take a break real quick. All right. Well, normally I would just take a sly break and edit it out, but we're live now. So, hey, everybody, we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we will return to play out a little bit more of this, see what happens in the rest of this Interlude 5, looking at Mizya, the Scribe and Scholar. We will see you in just a few moments. Please stick around. And we're back. Just double check and make sure we're both unmuted. All right. So, as we continue with your story, Mizya, we're going to sort of fast forward and montage again. What we see is the passage of time over, at first, several weeks, then months, and even years, as you continue working as an attendant at the Vault of Sages. In one of these scenes, I imagine we see Mizya continuing their work, documenting, filling in these histories, doing all this stuff, and we see candles burning down in time lapse very rapidly, and new candles being added, and pages and pages and pages, and the bookshelf sort of filling up with all of these things that you've written, spending most of your days when you're not working doing these things. But we also see all around you some of the attendants, particularly the humans, a couple of the humans that you're working with. As you barely seem to age, you watch as they age from, their 20s to 30s and 40s and 50s. and we no longer see some of them. And some of them just move on. But there are two others that are still here when you're here. Octru, the roommate, and Rosalind Lee is still working here. And the other thing that we see is that Mizya and this mysterious woman, elven woman, begin working together on an almost daily basis. They're continuously she's requested you for long stretches of time as her personal attendant. Early on in this sort of time lapse, we pause for a moment, a few days in, maybe even that next day when she comes in, and immediately requests you. We see Octru is kind of comes rushing over from where she was on the other side of the hall. You hear her, what you've quickly learned to recognize, even in your in the dark, you can recognize Octru's movements. She takes shorter steps, but she has this habit of shuffling her feet. So you hear this sort of shuffle across as she quickly moves over to you and is standing at your elbow. Did she just ask for you by name?
It appears so, yes.
And you know her?
I've had the chance to work with her, yes.
Do you know who she is?
No, should I?
Oh, by all the gods. Should you know who she is? Do you know who... You know who the Silver Lady is, yes? The founder of all of Silvery Moon?
Well, of course, Octru. I'm not a fool.
If you know who she is, then you should know who Ravenna, the daughter of the Onyx Feather, is. She's just as famous.
I just kind of stare at her blankly.
Dude, have I found the one piece of information that you don't know?
It would appear that is quite likely.
That is Ravenna, daughter of the Onyx Feather. The Onyx Feather is an organization of scientists, alchemists, artificers, arcanists, but they're not a part of the conclave of Silvery Moon. They operate outside of the school. They're independent scientists. And Ravonna is the leader of the entire organization. And you're going to pretend like it's not a big deal that she's personally requested you to be her attendant.
Octru, I am quite good at what I do. And helping others find what they need in the library is what we do.
Oh, promise me one thing, Mizya. You'll remember your dear friend Octru when you go on and become famous.
Who's Octru? And I just kind of like,
she just looks at you,
slap her
this...
on the shoulder. Yeah.
She just gives you this look like, what? From your perspective, take us again, similar to when you took us through your first few weeks. take us through the next several years as we see this sort of dynamic where it's not every day, and sometimes you might go stretches of a year or two where you don't see Ravonna, and you do other things within that. But what does the next, say, 30 years look like?
I think again, the day to day is very much the same thing over and over again. The only real difference, I think, is that over the years and then stretching into the decades, um, uh, those in charge tend to come to me more uh, because I have developed this system for finding things. Um, I don't really uh, get asked to train new people, new attendants, because most people don't like me. Um, but I am consulted by those that are, especially those that were there when I started, that I have kind of grown to respect. I don't have time for those new recruits, those new attendants. They ask questions that are very quickly within the first couple of years. I determine that those questions are beneath me, and people just don't come to me for them. As I work with Ravonna, though, I am spending a lot of time, again, whatever it is that she needs. I know that I can go get it, and we spend a lot of time just going through various projects, whatever it is that she's working on, whether it be research or writing something. I'm the scholar that looks up and can very quickly find the information that she's looking for. I think over time, though, I get to the point where I start to kind of pepper her with some questions, knowing that she's connected to the scientists and the alchemists. Alchemy is something that kind of tickles the back of my brain. Spell casting, things of that nature, and over time, whereas at the beginning of my time, everything was very focused on Menzel Branson, and I had a very direct course of study in my free time. Especially we get into the second and the third decades, less and less time is spent there, and more things are kind of expanding my knowledge base into spell casting, wizard colleges, and learning some of those things. I even pick up maybe even pick up a few spells here and there. Maybe I learned to cast dancing lights, and I use that to light my way through the stacks. And again, I kind of try my hand at alchemy from time to time, making a potion or two, and getting quickly frustrated with at it being unable to do it to the level of expertise that I expect of myself. But again, just kind of very quickly becomes, over the course of that 30 years, become kind of just a fixture in the library, where people expect to see me, and most of them give me kind of a wide berth. But those, Octru and the leaders of the library will seek me out when something is needed. So.
There's actually make me an insight check. I'm gonna distill 30 years into one insight check.
Okay, good, because it's a 6.
Okay,
good old power.
Perfect.
6.
Perfect. So one of the things, as you've worked off and on over these many years with Ravonna, her studies, sometimes you'll spend days holed up in one of the study lounges on the third or fourth floor, in one of the alchemy labs, or one of the artificer labs, or something like that. she seems to your mind, she seems to not have a particular area of focus. Um, she is just as likely to be studying astronomy one day, and then all of a sudden the next day you're pulling um, husbandry and forestry journals and accounts of rangers, looking at anything from bears and jackals to rabbits and boars. You don't know. And then the next day she's pulling, having you pull everything you can find on Milakovic, the goddess of nature. There just seems to be no connective tissue between all of these areas of study. And she doesn't share with you her findings. You might even be assisting her at times in some of these. And when there is a result, she will make notes in a black leather journal that anytime she writes in this journal, it is always turned in a way that only she can see its pages. And it's always kept on her person. She never lets anybody else see this journal. She does grow very comfortable with you, and you find that she treats you less like an attendant, and more like a I hesitate to say friend, because you never do anything outside of the Vault of Sages. But she values your opinion. She listens to you for who you are and your expertise. I would say somewhere midway through this 30 years, she comes to you, and it's late at night. And you're in the midst of assisting her in an alchemical experiment, and there's several flasks and beakers and things are bubbling, and colorful liquids moving through, and she puts a couple drops in to something, and she pulls off her goggles. All right, and we'll have to wait for that for a bit. I find it interesting that you can meet someone, you can know them for years. We've known each other for, 15, 16 years now?
Has it been that long?
It has.
Oh my.
And you barely think about what that person's life was like before you met them. For instance, it never occurred to me when I met you in the forehall, toying with that young adventurer. It never occurred to me that you had an entire lifetime in service to one of the great houses of Menzoberranzan. You served the matron mother of House Saloran, yes?
I'm quiet for quite a few seconds. I even kind of maybe draw back a little bit. I did. I have spoken of that to no one.
And yet you told me on that first day.
I told you no such thing.
You told me 2 words. Mizya, Helviar. And then you told me you were of Menzoberranzan. From there, it did not take me long to trace your lineage. You spent a great number of years in service to House Solora.
Is there a point to this line of questioning?
It's not a line of questioning, Mizya. It is simply observation.
I do not wish to speak of it.
And yet, here we are. I bring it up not to irritate or agitate you. Bring it up because I find it fascinating that you lived for so very long in close proximity to a very powerful house of Drow. That it was politics that pushed you out of your house, pushed you out of your home, pushed you into an entirely new world altogether.
I said, I do not wish to speak of it.
I heard you, Mizya. I have something for you. We've known each other for 16 years. I like to think that in those 16 years we've become something of, well, dare I say the word friend?
And I just glare at her. I mean, just daggers. I think my arms are probably crossed in front of me, and my fingernails are kind of digging into the skin of my arms.
She looks at you, but does not seem perturbed. She raises a hand and just sort of holds it out. And one of the bodyguards that are ever present with her, you notice over the years that the two bodyguards occasionally change. But that there are always two bodyguards with her. And one of them seems to meld out of the shadows and walks up to her and hands her a ornately wrapped black and silver package. She takes it and she walks over to where you are. She sits it down on the table in front of you. I want you to have this, Mizya. I apologize if I've angered you or upset you in some way. I simply wanted to acknowledge that I understand your heritage. I understand the tethers that one can sometimes have, no matter how hard we try to sever those. I understand that you must have come here at great personal cost. This is a token of my appreciation for all of the help you have given me over these years and for what I hope will be many more years of friendship. Please, take this. She just kind of puts her hand on it and just gives it barely a millimeter of movement towards you.
I pause for a few seconds, but very quickly kind of relax. My shoulders kind of release. My arms drop to my sides. And I kind of reach out and I put my hand on the package and I look up at her. I do apologize. I reacted poorly. It obviously is not something I am comfortable dealing with, even after all of this time. But I accept this in the spirit that it was given. And then I will go ahead and pick it up and I apologize. It's been many a year since anyone has given me anything. And is it proper for me to open it here, or do I do that later?
Her entire demeanor shifts, and she's suddenly like almost like just giddy. As she's like, "Oh yes, please, please! I want to see the look on your face when you open it."
And I'll just kind of awkwardly untie it and open it up.
As you untie it and lift the lid off the box, inside this black wrapped box that was tied up with silver, you see purple silk. And laying in the purple silk are 3 items. There is a black book, very similar, if not identical, to the book that you see her secretively writing in all the time. You can see in the corner of it is embossed just the image of a feather in the lower right hand corner of this book. Next to it, to the left of it, nestled in the purple silk, is a very large and elegant raven's feather. But somebody has, with very delicate touch and expert craftsmanship, has woven a very fine iridescent purple thread through the I don't even know what you call them, the pieces of the feather that make it a feather. Mm-hmm. So that as you turn it in the light, it's a black raven's feather, but it catches the light and glows through various colors of purple. And it has a very sharp quill tip on the end. And the third item that is in there is a rolled up piece of parchment paper sealed with a purple wax seal with that same feather. The seal is sort of embedded into the wax, and then somebody has painted over it so that the feather is black on this purple wax background. Well,
I don't know what to say. It's quite beautiful. And I'll pick up the scroll, and I kind of look at, kind of still a little bit nervous about breaking the seal on it, or like looking for like an okay.
Please do open it.
I'll go ahead and crack that open.
You crack it open, and you barely get the wax seal broken, and she's already got her hands in there, and she's sort of helping you to open it, and immediately starts pointing with her slender fingers. You see that she has very dark black lacquered nails, and she has these sort of iridescent purple feathers. They seem to almost lie below the surface of the nails as she sort of traces along. This book and quill are what I hope is, in this new world, your first spell book. If not, then it is probably the best spell book you've ever had. And this is a spell of Unseen Servant. And she begins to trace the arcane sigils and the magical writing. And of course, I don't have to explain to you the process of copying this into this book using the magical ink, which you will find under the book in the case. And that spell will become a permanent part of your book, and you will be able to cast not those silly cantrips that you'll get by on, but an actual spell.
I kind of step back, and I sit down in a chair that's kind of up against the wall, and I just kind of stare at this book, and I've got everything kind of like splayed out in front of me. I've got the quill laying on top of the book. Um, I I don't know what to say. It's been so long since I've had a spell book of my own. They 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 took it from me. I can't accept this.
I understand, Mizya. I understand what it is like to have something taken away from you against your will. I understand what it's like to try to push down that anger, that hatred, and try to bury it under years and years of separation. But you know what I found? No matter how much distance and time, no matter how many miles of earth you try to separate yourself from the things that pain you, they will always be there. Unless you say, fuck 'em. And you move
Yes, but
forward.
fuck them.
Yes.
Yes, I like that.
Now, here. She indicates a place in the arcane sigils of the spell. There's a gap between a couple of the phrases. I intentionally left this blank. You will have to write in, before you copy this into your spell book, this is the place where you name your unseen servant. You will have to give them a name. What will you call your unseen servant?
Last time I had a spell book, this was one of my most used spells, and I named him Barnaby. And I can't think of a name that would be better. But there's only one Barnaby, so I will name this one Barnaby with 2 A's.
Absolutely delightful. Make it so.
And I'll take the pen and just kind of excitedly scribble the name onto the scroll.
And we see that Mizya begins transferring this spell into their spell book as Ravenna, the daughter of the Onyx Feather, goes about continuing with the experiment. We're going to, as we pull back from this scene, we sort of, similar to the very beginning, we pull out through one of the windows, and we see a raven sitting on the windowsill, and the raven takes flight and flies out around through the city of Silvery Moon. And as it does so, we see the people changing. We see a few buildings growing in place, being built, a few other buildings changing ownership, and we see the rapid changing of the seasons as this far north Silvery Moon experiences all 4 seasons. And the raven eventually finds its way back to the upper floor of the Vault of Sages, this time landing in front of a different window. And as we pass through, we see the office of the Supervisor of Attendants. And below the title Supervisor of Attendants, we see the name Mizya Helviar. You have your own office, It has been another 20, 30 years. You wear the white vestments of an attendant, but yours has the additional vestments with purples in them, indicating that you are not only a supervisor of attendants, but you are the supervisor of all attendants. What do you do in your office? What have you been up to these last 20 or 30 years? And how do you run your charges?
The office that I'm in now is lined with books. I'm the only one that knows what's in these books, though. They're the books that I have written, filling in the gaps of history of Mizya and the houses of the drow houses that were missing from the library. They are, again, they line the walls, shelves all the way across. I've got a desk that I sit at, where that spell book is still there with that same quill pen. And Barnaby is kind of scattering around, just picking things up for me, just kind of always there at my side. As far as how things are run, I run things by proxy. People still don't want to be around me. I think Ravana is the only person. Ravana and Octru are really the only two that interact, and I would imagine that Octru is probably a trusted underling, aide, lieutenant, whatever. I work through Octru, who is kind of my voice to the attendants. I'm seen but not heard, and it's kind of like that kind of hushed. That's Mizya, and again, for the people that are there, they don't want to be around me. I've kind of closed myself off over the last few decades to most people. I'm very demanding of what of my charges, but we have improved the index system for the library. And I tried to improve the lives of those attendants so that they're not having to run. We've, those shelves that Octru and I use to get at some of those books a little bit easier are now part of the everyday work for those in the attendants that work there. So yeah, that's kind of just. I very rarely leave that room, and when I do, everybody kind of moves off to the side to get out of my way. And I kind of like the fact that everybody is deferential to me, and I kind of chuckle on the inside that they think I'm this mean-spirited, kind of bitchy persona, and I don't really fight that perception of me. I kind of let it permeate the walls and use it to my advantage from day to day.
Yeah, and Octru is basically has taken on a role similar to Madame Winkle, who can still be seen from time to time around the halls, but she has grown more advanced in years and retired as a supervisor of attendants. And Octru even wears the tight bun with the pencils and the style of Madame Winkle, and has that same matronly, stern but friendly tone. I would say that Octru over the years has probably become sort of the buffer between you and all the other attendants and sages and everybody, that where you might give her harsh words to give to them, she, by the time it gets to the person, uh it comes across much more tempered, but people know that they're hearing Aktru's words, not your words, because your reputation does indeed precede you. Over the years, you continue to work with less in a your relationship with Ravona develops more into a friendship. And you begin to understand that the experiments that you worked on years ago and over the years were towards an end that you're still not sure of, but you know that they were serving things that she is doing out in the world, of which you have little to no experience. Your entire world has been the vault of the sages. But you catch glimpses of the outer world as she makes reference to things that have happened. At one point, during one set of experimentation one night, working in an artificer's lab, working with a delicate orrery, studying the movement of the moon around Toril, and making very fine adjustments. One of her bodyguards comes up to her, again seeming to meld from shadow, whispers something in her ear, and you see an anger that you've not seen before. It's not terribly violent, though she does. She stops just short of actually grabbing hold of the orrery. You see that she wants to lash. She's just suddenly, this color, what little bit of color there can be, comes to her otherwise pale features. And she starts to lunge towards this orrery, and then she... Ugh! Damn it! Well, there's nothing that can be done about it now. What's done is done. I will have to... I don't know.
Is there something wrong? Something
yes.
I can...
Nothing you can do, Mizya. It's... I know you don't get outside the vault, let alone the city, much, if ever. This landscape between here and Sunderbar and Luskin and further south, even to the north, is dotted with settlements. Some of them are small enough that they don't even have names. I had a vested interest in a settlement to the southeast, and that settlement was just put to the torch by warmongering bandits. I have no idea how many, if any, people survived that place.
That seems unfortunate, yes.
Yes, I will be gone for a few days. I will have to look into this. And she kind of looks at everything and she says, can you please continue to monitor the orrery? Using the calculations I've given you. Take notes. I will copy everything when I return. And she quickly excuses herself and leaves. These kind of things happen from time to time over the years. You start... it's like it's taken literally decades, but she starts to let her guard down a little bit. And she still doesn't tell you the details of what's going on. When she does return a few days later, it's as if nothing happened. And then there's probably, I would say probably another 10 years or so later, the two of you have been, one of the things I imagine you do together is quietly read, just being, choosing to spend hours in silence. I would like you to make me a perception check as she begins whispering quietly as one of her bodyguards comes up to her. If you attempt to eavesdrop, you can roll with advantage.
It doesn't matter because I rolled a nat 20 for a 23.
Okay.
And I mean, definitely eavesdropping, but.
So one of the bodyguards comes up to her and you hear not what he says. You've never heard the bodyguard speak. But she speaks in quiet whispers as she says, "The whole family's gone. We don't know. Nobody seems to know where anybody is. All right. I would like you to send some of the Shadow Guard to Waterdeep. The eldest was studying at the university in Waterdeep. What of the girl?" "Very well. I want you to keep agents in that area. We will keep our eyes peeled. I want to know if anything happens, if anybody spots them. Do not approach. Come to me. No, I don't care about the father. The parents' fate, not my concern. So I know who he was. Now go." And she just immediately goes back to flipping through her book. Do you say anything to her, or do you just pretend you didn't?
I just pretend. I like to think I've probably arranged, out of curiosity, for these little things that happen periodically with Ravona. I've arranged my office in a way that I can pick up. I'm actively trying to arrange my room to pick up these conversations and these bits that she's clearly not ready to share with me, but I'm too curious to let go. So the whole time I'm just sitting there flipping through my book. I don't even look up.
She does not seem to give any indication that she even worries that you might have heard. And I would say another couple of years passes. And probably about another 5 years passes. You are sitting in one of the study areas, one of the lounges where you and Ravona often find yourselves quietly reading together. And she's late, which is very uncharacteristic. You have known this woman for 50 or 60 years at this point, and she has never been late. It's evening. There's a fire crackling away in the fireplace. You're sitting in one of the two wing-back leather chairs in this room. And then you hear the door to this private lounge opens. And suddenly, Ravona comes quickly into the room. You hear her say, "No, wait outside." Another thing that has never happened before. Ravona comes into the room without her bodyguards. And she approaches you.
I think I will sit up. I make a pointed gesture to close my book and look directly at her as she walks in. What is it?
Things are happening at a much faster pace and outside of my control. I don't like it. There are pieces that I have had in place for decades, and I fear they may come tumbling down around us. I don't know if you heard. Last year, one of the laboratories at the Conclave, there was that accident, the explosion. There were quite a few people that were killed and injured in that. What nobody knows is they were conducting research at my request. Some of my alchemists and archivists and artificers were there. Most of them and most of their work was lost. I have received word that some of them may have survived, may be out there. What I find curious is there are pieces of this grand puzzle that I have been working out for so very long, that though they have slipped off the table, they're rolling around on the floor. As I look at them, they seem to be gathering together. I know I'm babbling, Mizya, but I don't know yet how to make sense of this. If my observations, my theories are correct, I need to ask something of you. Can I count on you?
I don't know how I can help, but I will do what I can.
Mizya, what I'm going to ask you to do may be very difficult, given your past. I need you to leave Silvery Moon.
What? You
I
need me
need
to
you
do what?
to leave the Vault of Sages. I need you to leave your job. I need you to leave. I need you to leave your life's work here. I will see to it that your offices are secured for as long as I can. But I need you.
Just wait a moment. You who pulled me up out of the despair that I had the last time my life was destroyed, wants to take me away from the life that I've built here? Whatever for?
There are things that are at work here that, as I said, have been in progress since before we met. Only now, the last few years, after dealing with some unexpected outcomes, have I been able to adjust. Even now I feel the endgame slipping through my fingers. I have a few individuals that are working for me, that are attempting similar means, but they will not be able to get this close, nor will they be able to integrate themselves as well as I think you will.
Will I help you? I'm a disgraced former advisor who leads a library by proxy.
Even after 60 years, you've still struggled to leave that behind you. I gave you, 35 years ago? 40 years ago? I gave you a spell book. How many spells have you written in that book, Mizya?
I don't know.
2, 3? Yet how many thousands, tens of thousands of pages of books that no one will ever read have you filled? Telling the stories of your past. When will you write your own future, Mizya? I'm giving you that opportunity now. You can do so, helping me, but this isn't like when you left Menzel Baranzan, disgraced. They took everything from you. They stripped everything from you, your spell books. They stripped away who you were. You've made a semblance of a new life, but you've not really moved on. What I'm asking you to do is go out and be my eyes and ears where I cannot be. Get close, observe and report on what you see. But where this strongly differs from anything you've experienced in the past is I want you to stay in touch.
I do not know how I can help you, but you know I will not be able to deny your request. So I will do what I can to the best of my abilities, because it is you who asks.
I knew that I could count on you. And you know, when I tell you that I will keep your belongings safe, I will not allow them to become stripped from you. It will be the contents of your office will be protected more so than even the most rare books in this vault. Now, I need you to leave immediately. Take this. And she reaches inside her robes and she pulls out a small leather pouch. And she withdraws from this leather pouch a set of brooches. They look like they're mostly black, with a little bit of amethyst, purple amethyst within them. and they're very stylized looks of spiders. The two are identical. She hands you the one. You will keep this with you at all times. I will keep this with me at all times. As long as we remain on the same plane of existence, anywhere in this world, you can whisper short messages into this brooch, and I will receive them. And I can do the same for you. You will have to leave behind your vestments, the office of Supervisor of Attendance. I have left a few things in your room. You will want to take from your own collection, or if you have other means to get a hold of at least a book, I would recommend more than one. Something of a rarer nature, because where you're going, you will need them. I'm asking you to go south. Just south of the city of Baldur's Gate, there lies a peninsula. And there is another library, said to rival that. The Vault of Sages. I'm sure you know of it. You've heard of it.
You speak of Candlekeep.
I do. So I know that this is not going to be some great hardship for you. Consider this, in and of itself, a sort of gift for you, Mizya.
That you asked so nicely.
What I need you to do is keep your eye out for some individuals. She reaches into a pocket of her robes and she pulls out a sheaf of parchment and she unfurls them and kind of moves closer to the light of the fire. And she unrolls them. She shows you a series of illustrations. Artist rendering of individuals. You see what appears to be a half-orc man with a scar on his forehead. A muscled human woman. A somewhat nondescript but large humanoid man. And a half-elven woman with a wolf in the sketch. There's also a sketch of a human man with dreadlocks pulled back in a top knot, a beard. This one works for me. And she shows you another one that looks like a male, a slightly older male version of the half-elven woman. You're also looking for this one. Been looking for him for the better part of 5 years. Last seen in Waterdeep. He was a student. It is possible he's made his way to Candlekeep or in the nearby regions. I'll need you keep an eye out for him as well. Get to know them. Integrate yourself with them. Befriend them for all I care. I just need to know what they're doing. That's all.
That is asking a lot of me, and you know it.
I do. But you also know that I would not ask you if it were not important.
Well, at least this doggo looks cute.
Yes. He's not a dog. It's a wolf.
Oh, well, close enough.
It is very important that you know that distinction.
I'll see what I can do. I'm not very good with people, you know.
I'm sort of counting on your demeanor. I need to hear it, Mizya. I need to hear you agree to do this. Is this something you will do for me?
Yes, yes. I will do it for you.
You must leave immediately for Candlekeep. And that's where we're going to end this. I just had to bait you into saying yes, yes.
I was hoping you would. Hoping you would. So,
And now I know the others are freaking out because they knew I saved yours for last for a reason. I don't know how much they're freaking out, but yes, the implications of Mizya have changed dramatically. But only from the viewer's perspective, because guess what? Characters know nothing. And I just want to say that this is one of the privileges that I have of getting to DM for such an amazing group of players, is that I know that we can do something like we've done with these interludes. This was the 5th of a series of one-on-ones with each player, with each character, and every one of them has learned secrets about the others. And knowing that while it's going to change fundamentally, these sessions alter how you view your own character, I know that these players aren't going to metagame and use these knowledges that they've learned through these sessions. And I can't wait to see when we return next week how things continue, because as much as I've loved these interludes, I miss playing with all of you. And we're just getting started. Y'all are just barely level 4s in what's going to be an epic, up to 20th level campaign. So these have been just absolutely amazing. I'm so glad we could do these. Yeah, we will return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern with episode 28, title to be determined. And in case people are wondering, and also I only just recently changed it, Dawnbringers will not be returning on Thursday, January 6th, but will be returning instead on Thursday, January 13th with Season 6, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. So we're looking forward to that as well. And if you are not already following Big Bearded Nerd on Twitter and myself at MTD_Jake, you're going to want to do that at D&D Jordan Lee. The three of us are Mini Terrain Domain. Keep an eye on our social medias. Keep an eye on the channel. Big things are happening in 2022. Nothing specific. We've just got big plans, and we had a recent opportunity to play a game for an awesome charity that we hope to do more work with in the near future. And we just think we have a great little corner of the internet here, and we'd love to have you be a part of our community. Join our Discord. I would tell you to Jordan or Cari, can somebody drop the Discord link, since the chat commands aren't working? But with that, thank you again, Dwight.
Absolutely.
And again, Dwight, because some of this we kind of went through yesterday. But I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Thank you to everybody who participated in chat. And if you are one of those people that like to lurk in the background and not participate in chat, we appreciate you all the same as well, whether you participate or not. And already said a huge thank you to Dwight, but also want to thank Gary and Cari and Jordan and Ricky, my amazing players, And one final time for Dwight, without whom this would have been me talking to myself for the last 2.5 hours. With that, we are going to go ahead and end this stream the same way we end every stream. You can say it with me if you want. Wait a minute. I just saw that I forgot to do a raid. So stick around, because when we end this channel, or end this thing, we're gonna raid Zerjester. It looks like. So give all the love over to Sir Jester as we end this stream the same way we end every stream, and you can say it with me if you want.